Caution, you are about to enter the no-spin zone.
That's what he tells viewers every night, but a new study from Indiana University says that Bill O'Reilly, quote, consistently paints certain people and groups as villains and others as victims to present the world as he sees it through political rhetoric, close quote from that study. The study also found that Bill O'Reilly uses name-calling more than once every 7 seconds in his Talking Points memo editorial segment. One of his favorite targets is the so-called liberal agenda of the media. Take a look.
Bill Moyers, the far left, and blatant dishonesty. That's the subject of this evening's Talking Points memo. Once and for all, I'm going to show you how dishonest radical left propagandist Bill Moyers really is. Hopefully we won't have to deal with him ever again. We exposed him on Monday when we spotlighted his financial ties to the far left. And last night, his unfair and unbalanced documentary about the media and the war in Iraq ran on PBS. Few watched as Moyers' reputation is shot.
So, is a study accurate, and will it stand in his way? Here's Paul Waldman. He's senior fellow at the progressive media watchdog group, Media Matters, and Bob Cohn, author of the book, Journalistic Fraud. So, Paul, what do you make of the study? Every 7 seconds, you think somebody may be cherry-picking some facts here to make Bill O'Reilly look worse than he is?
Well, I think this is one more nail in the coffin of Bill O'Reilly's credibility. And this really vindicates everything that we at Media Matters have been saying about him for a long time. He doesn't get his facts right. He attacks everyone who disagrees with him, not just on the basis of the issues, but personally. Anyone who he doesn't like what they're saying, he says that they're far left, that they're fascist, that they're crazy. He's always attacking anyone. And one of the other things that the study pointed out is that about half of those segments play on fear. And in Bill O'Reilly's world, there are friends and enemies, and the world is always about to end if we give in to the enemies, most of whom are other Americans. So that's the kind of poisonous stew that he spits out every day on his television show and his radio show.
Bob Cohn?
If you go to MediaMatters.org, we have a video up of him claiming that he doesn't do personal attacks, and then we have a whole string of personal attacks that he does.
Joe, this is the kind of study, the juvenile study that you can expect from many of our nation's journalism schools today. I mean, in the study, they actually liken Bill O'Reilly to a fascist and an anti-Semite. This is what they said in their press release. Now, talk about name-calling. Now, they accuse Bill O'Reilly of not presenting the views of the political left in his talking points. What's that about? His talking points is a political commentary by Bill O'Reilly. Then he has, right after the talking points, someone from the left and someone from the right, usually giving both points of view. There really is, I mean, very few of the conclusions reached by this study are actually backed up by the facts in the study.
Bob Cohn, let me ask you this, and we'll present that. We'll have Paul respond to those very good points you make. But Bill O'Reilly does say that he doesn't engage in personal attacks. That's certainly not the case, is it, Bob?
He certainly uses a lot of language that probably is unqualified, and he can be criticized for that. I think that's fair enough. If Bill O'Reilly does use names against people in terms of it, he does seem to put things in. This is good, this is evil, this is left, this is right. He does that to kind of simplify things for his audience, but that's not all he does. He does provide the facts. He does provide analysis. He wouldn't be the #1 rated on cable television if he only did name-calling. Obviously, the audience is finding useful analysis on his program, useful analysis in his talking points, and I think this study is way off. It's taking things out of context, and I think is juvenile.
And I'll tell you, the one thing I have found in 4 years on cable news is you always pay for it when you underestimate the intelligence of your audience. So certainly, Bob, that's a good point. Paul, let's go back to a point that Paul brings up, that Bob brings up, and that is you've got a study attacking Bill O'Reilly for throwing names around, and yet this study issues a press release and compares him to a fascist.
Well, the problem with O'Reilly is not just that he calls people names, but that he denies that he does this.
Well, okay, but let's talk. Hold on a second. Stop. I'm not talking about Bill O'Reilly. I'm talking about Indiana University throwing the first stone, and yet he's being compared to a fascist.
You'd have to ask them why they wrote their press release the way they did.
Well, but doesn't that suggest there's a political agenda there?
But the fact of the matter is that Bill O'Reilly doesn't just call people.
Wait a second. I want to stop you for a second.
They called him an anti-Semite.
Stop. Hey, Paul, I'll let you continue, but first answer this question. When they call Bill O'Reilly a fascist, when they call him an anti-Semite, which he's about as pro-Israel as anybody I've seen, does that not suggest that there is a political agenda in this Indiana University study?
They did not call him those names. They talked about him in comparison to a previous study that had been done on Father Coughlin, who was a fascist and an anti-Semite, but they didn't call Bill O'Reilly those names.
Now, so you're not a fascist or an anti-Semite. You're just like the guy that we did a study on before that was a fascist and an anti-Semite.
Joe, again, you're going to have to ask them about why they wrote the press release the way that they did. But the fact is that O'Reilly doesn't just issue forth all these vitriol, all this kind of river of vitriol at anyone who disagrees with him. He also doesn't get his facts right. We have caught him in literally hundreds of times when he says things that are not true. And if Fox wants to be a serious news channel, and this is their marquee talent, this is the guy who's kind of leading their charge, who's their #1 host, I think that explains why people don't take Fox News seriously.
Well, not only is he, Bob, the #1 host on Fox News, he's the #1 host in cable news by a long shot. Bob, here's the deal. I have attacked Bill O'Reilly on this show. You have defended Bill O'Reilly. He says things that are inaccurate. He says things that I find highly offensive. But at the same time, it's a rough world in the cable world out there for Bill O'Reilly people. I mean, there are political battles that go on both sides. And there's name-calling on both sides. Yeah, and it seems like that's exactly what's happening here with this university study.
Look, everybody is going to make mistakes. I mean, the New York Times makes mistakes all the time, both on their editorial page, their op-ed pages, their news pages. Bill O'Reilly makes mistakes. Sometimes you can own up to those mistakes. You try to correct those mistakes. But
Bill O'Reilly doesn't own up to those mistakes. Bill O'Reilly does not own up to those mistakes.
He does own up to mistakes.
Absolutely not.
Don't take a study by a university. This is a university. I feel sorry for the parents who pay the tuition for this university to have studies like this that are just completely foolish. I mean, this is juvenile.
But let me give you an example, Joe.
We're going to have to go, unfortunately. Paul, I'm going to give you 10 seconds. Give me that example.
Bill O'Reilly calls Media Matters the most vile, despicable people in the country because we put up his words and the video and transcript of his words, and that's what he can't take.
They're not the most viable.
No, you're not the most viable and despicable. I suppose he would say we are. But, Paul, thank you so much for being with us. Bob Cohn, thank you for being with us. And there's no doubt, Bill O'Reilly says some things that and I just don't understand why he says them. But you know what? I think he's just a Long Island guy. He's a tough guy. He's a street fighter. Little more genteel coming from the South. Guys, thanks for being with us. Greatly appreciate it. Great conversation, great discussion, great debate.